Everyone, and welcome to this great Orbi Talk. We're going to discuss IRIS2, and behind that strange acronym is nothing less than a unique and essential opportunity to propose a secure European satellite constellation solution. But not just that, its ambition, the challenge of surpassing and providing autonomy in this field beyond what can be done elsewhere, and provide a European communications model to be envied worldwide. Thankfully, I have a fantastic panel here who can discuss the challenges and aims of IRIS. They are, put your hand up, Jean-Hubert Lenotte, Chief Strategy and Resources Officer at Eutelsat, Stéphane Vesval, a Senior VP Sales and Marketing Space Systems at Airbus Defence and Space, Benoît Couture, VP Telecom Constellations at IRIS at Thales Alenia Space, Captain Camille Girard, Operations Project Expert on IRIS2, Senior Officer at Joint Forces, HQ Paris. Thanks very much. So we'll talk together for about 30 minutes, 35, and then we'll take questions from the public. So my first two questions, I guess, to Thales and to Airbus. It took me until just a few minutes ago to discover why do we call it IRIS2? You told me why. Go on, tell me why.
Yes, as you know, IRIS2 is made by engineers. Every acronym has a signification, and each word is important. So I need my paper. Infrastructure for resilience, interconnectivity, and security by satellite. And every word is important. Telecommunication, resilience, security.
Okay, did you know that? Okay, serious question. Why IRIS now?
I believe IRIS2 is taking a succession of already existing constellations in Europe for Earth observation, Copernicus, for navigation with Galileo, and now IRIS2 for telecommunication. It is the first step to build a full coverage of satellite for Europe. Why now? It took some time, and perhaps Jean-Hubert or Camille will detail. It took some time for Europe to organize itself to launch the project. But now, and in particular, we see that since the war in Ukraine, IRIS2 is a must, not nice to have, is a must, an obligation for Europe to be able to manage its secure and governmental communication all over the world.
Do you want to pick up on that?
Yes, when you mention why now, what is interesting is that we are exactly at the crossroads, which exactly explain why now. Why now? First, in terms of industrialization, we are at a time where the industry and the space industry is getting ready and is already ready for this heavy industrialization that this highly dense constellation required. Why now? Because it's clear that LEO connectivity is a must and is very much needed. Amongst other things, I mean, we are believers in multi-orbit, but LEO definitely has a key role. And also right now, because sovereignty and security are key topics and top priority, just in a nutshell.
At Eutelsat, when do you want this up and running?
So maybe let me just first add to what Benoît and Stéphane said, which is, let me take the point of view of our customers. Why now? I think that everybody now realizes that LEO is really a truly new infrastructure and a true new era for SATCOMs. Meaning that with LEO, you have connectivity everywhere, at scale, with low latency, and with a customer experience that is really unprecedented for SATCOMs. And of course, so this is very important for the needs of the society, consumer needs, enterprise, and bridging the digital divide. And this is important as well as an infrastructure for the sovereignty, so for the security of our states, for military needs. And so for all that, we do need something. Plus, the second realization is that when you look at the success or what potential competitors can do there, the dual nature of LEO communication is very clear. You do need to have some strong public support. That has been the case for Starlink, SpaceX since inception. Probably 25, 30 up to $40 billion have been injected in SpaceX. And so you do need public support. And at the same time, because you have a few of those constellations, you do need the commercial pool as well to make these constellations profitable and a good investment. So this is the realization of those elements that mean now. Now, when is now, to your question? This is exactly as planned. So we aim to have IRIS2 up in service in 2030 for the first satellites, 2031 for the full LEO constellation and MEO constellation. So this is, both in one sense far away, and I will come back to that because we have OneWeb and Eutelsat in Europe, but at the same time, this is very close, and so we are fully focused on getting this happen in reality with Stéphane and Benoit and others.
Gentlemen, manufacturers, are you okay with that timeline?
Yes, of course, it is a timeline. We are working all together to do that. As you know, Space Rise, hello, yes, consortium of Eutelsat, Hispasat, and SES has signed a consortium agreement in December last year, and now we are starting to put in place everything able to deliver the satellite. On this way, up to the initial operating end of 2030, Thales Alenia Space is a Space Rise on system engineering, is providing some advisory support for the Commission and Space Rise, and is very focused on the brain of a new constellation, meaning the payload and everything associated to the payload with the processor, digital active antennas, and the software. So for the first time, we will embed 5G software in the satellite, not only repeating the waveform, but we'll be able to deal with the 5G and to make the computation on board the satellite to have new services for IRIS2.
And the key topic about the timeline, it's coming back to the topic of the industrialization. I think that OneWeb was a landmark program in that respect. I mean, for the European industry, taking the production rates to levels that were not matched before. But it's about getting ready for the industrialization, being able to manage the ramp-up, which is absolutely key, and it's a heavy industrial topic as well. And this ramp-up, it's only managed thanks to a control on the supply chain. So that's what really is at the heart of the engine. Of course, we do have some development activities that we need to keep under control, but after that, to make sure that we've got the full industrialization, the full supply chain lined up to make sure that we are on the timeline.
Before I talk to you about sovereignty, I just want to pick up on one thing. You mentioned public money. In other words, the taxpayer. It's not cheap. What's in it for the taxpayer?
What's in it? It's in fact really many things, which is it starts with bridging the digital divide, which is making sure that you have an infrastructure that helps connecting people in poorly deserved area, and this is the case in Europe right now. You still, of course, it's a small portion of the territory and population, but still you have it. So with such constellation, you have from the commercial perspective a truly, absolutely global coverage, and so all enterprises, all businesses will have the right connectivity. You have the resilience. So when you have catastrophes, it's been the case, not so long ago in Germany. You have the need for resilience and for, precisely backup connectivity. So LEO can provide that, and then of course security and sovereignty precisely are important for the taxpayer as well. So you have a massive number of reasons. One is as well economical, which is we have a brilliant and vibrant aerospace ecosystem in Europe, and we need to protect it. It's very highly performing, but we need to be in a new era of LEO, and this is as well one other good reason where taxpayers see the benefit.
Camille, sovereignty is a big issue.
Maybe on the military perspective too, right now, because the strategic context is evolving very fast. You see the threat everywhere, the pressure, the deterioration of international context. So it means we should move very fast to be able to adapt quicker to a VUCA world and to be able to decide and act quicker than the enemy. So accelerate OODA loop. So for that, why no? Because it's strategic for the European sovereignty to be able to be autonomous in military operation and don't rely only on the US and China in military operation like you can see in Ukraine.
In a minute, you're going to show me, we're going to look at a video. When you say not relying on the Americans or elsewhere, because at the moment that's the situation? We need them at the moment?
Today we can rely on geostationary satellites for very high heavy threat against a nuclear explosion, things like that, and we can rely on civilian systems like Eutelsat-1 and geostationary, for instance, or OneWeb, as OneWeb could provide a worldwide coverage.
I think you have a video explaining the sovereignty potential. If in the régie you can just show us this video and Camille will explain.
So here you have what we use now, the geostationary for very high threats, anti-jamming, anti-nuclear explosion, but very quite expensive because it's a big antenna. So it's not it's not deployed everywhere. So the new system could be used for multi-domain operation. OneWeb now, since 2023, complementary to geostationary, could give massive connectivity because it's lower, so small swap for antennas and one-way coverage. And the target, LEO plus MEO, IRIS2, which will provide a big infrastructure in space with inter-satellite link, which is something very, very important for resiliency. And furthermore, which allow to put some secondary payload on it for sensors, effectors, even for intelligence.
Great. Now, one question is kind of like the elephant in the room. Your friends today, your rivals as well, but you're working on this project. How does that work?
Can you repeat your question?
Yeah, your rivals as well as colleagues on this project. How does that work?
That's work. We're at the beginning, in fact. As I said, it has been launched in December. So we're on the way to, and SpaceRAS is structuring all the procurement plan to fit to the schedule. So we're at the beginning. For instance, for Thales Alenia Space, we started to work at the beginning of the year to de-risk the payload. Because you have understood that to deliver all these services, and these very services more efficient and with more bandwidth than what can deliver Starlink, we need to develop new function, new component, new system, as we said, in Europe. And so this means that we are starting with a low technical maturity level, but we need to increase. So it was why we started with Eutelsat and SpaceRAS at the beginning of the year to mature this technology. For instance, to give you an idea, in the frame of IRIS2, each digital antenna will be able to point a few hundred different points on the ground, to follow them and to put the energy needed by point, to be able to distribute and to give a bandwidth where the bandwidth is needed. So this technology is key for the commercial, but also for the crisis management, to be able to really to focus on different small areas. And this is a new technology for which we have launched the development in Thales Alenia Space.
The example that you're referring to, I mean, IRIS2 is nothing special. We are used to compete, we are used to collaborate on many other domains. For me, what is very important on IRIS2 is that we need to make sure that we focus on the right thing. It's a complex system because, I mean, managing security through such a large system, it is a topic. What is important is to make sure that as an industry, we are at our best in terms of collaboration, at our best in terms of execution. We know, in any case, ourselves, we can't do it everything on our own. So we do have to open up, we do have to collaborate. The topic on this project, it's not about work share. It's about what works and what doesn't work, because we will need to be there at the right time, because it is a strategic capability. I would like to pick up on one point, Chris, that you mentioned. You were referring to the US, and you were saying that do we still need the US? One point to have in mind when we need the US, it's not because of technology, We do have all the technology, and on many technologies we are even benchmark and we are even supplying that technology to the US. What we are lacking compared to the US is volume effect. And what I'm saying, it applies both in communication, in Earth observation. So the topic is how do we ramp up our capabilities so that we acquire some level of autonomy, so that we don't have just state-of-the-art technology, but we do also have the volume effect for intelligence, for connectivity, so that we are in full control of our own capability. That's also why technology comes together with the industrialization.
And to echo Stéphane and Benoit, I think that on the operator side, so we are as well fully convinced that there will be one European LEO constellation, and this is today Eutelsat OneWeb and tomorrow IRIS2 backbone. One European MEO constellation, which is SES, and we know that it's very important to unite forces as well, and precisely to get those volumes. There is on top limited spectrum to share, so this is why typically on LEO we will be there. We'll have to share spectrum with the US and Chinese constellation, and this is why we have only a few players, including us for Europe. So the various reasons why we need to be united are very clear, and again, our interests extremely aligned within the Space Rights Consortium for that reason.
As the military spokesperson here, we all know about the geopolitical tensions we're facing on our borders. So how is this a game changer for you?
Yes, for us, it's a game changer complementary to the military system because it's a question first of data rate and latency, low latency. We could discuss about the use cases after. The coverage, which is worldwide, even in the north or tomorrow in the south. And the fact, maybe much more important one, is about the low-cost users terminals. That's maybe the much more important point because it allows to massively deploy it on board vehicles, aircraft, or warships, or vehicles. So it's like a big infrastructure for that. So from a military perspective, what is maybe to have in mind is that it's a decisive issue to increase resiliency, agility at a global scale, at a European scale, for instance, with the LIS, because everyone will be able to have the system, to use it using IP, and to share data, and then to command.
Jean-Hubert, there's a lot of big players and small players all participating in creating IRIS2. As the ultimate person who'll be running it, do you not look at that with a bit of concern, saying there's too many putting this together?
So it's been always the case that even when you build big geo satellites, it's you have the primes, which are typically colleagues here on this panel and some others, but you have as well a myriad of smaller players, which are SMEs from all over Europe, sometimes beyond, that actually contribute there. So IRIS2 is exactly of the same nature. I think we want to introduce with that some new blood as well from some SMEs which can bring new ideas to actually make sure that the new systems we develop are really top-notch, and that we not only go back to be at par in terms of technology with Starlink and Amazon, but as well take new advances. And I think we have the capabilities in Europe, including with those small players, and of course our friends from Airbus and TAS to actually get there. So no, not an issue. In fact, it's a strength. It's positive for the project.
Stéphane, for IRIS2 to work, you need to have all the manufactured parts for the sovereignty to be made in Europe. Can we do that?
It's one of the exercises that we are doing at the moment. I think also that it's coming at an interesting time. I mean, in 2022, we already ran through that big exercise of rediscovering and learning about our dependency, and of course, I'm talking about the war in Ukraine, to try to rediscover our dependency, really make sure that we fully master. It doesn't necessarily mean that each and everything comes from the same place, but it means that you are in full control so that nobody has the ability to restrict your supply chain or to cut you off or to control the technology. This is what we do every day. I think that also there are in parallel, and it will be part of the program, an opportunity to bring back some things that perhaps we let go perhaps, or we rely too much on the outside. So it is about sovereignty.
Just one thing I want to ask.
Just to complete, as we said, to be able to open the constellation, at one point we'll have to produce roughly 1 satellite per day. So it's clearly a game changer for the European space industry. We already had produced in the past constellation, clearly with less satellite. In the case of Telesat and IRIS2, we are benefiting to have 2 large countries, Italy and France, and clearly we will split for the payload, the production on the 2 sites, to be able to produce this 1 payload or satellite per day. And we are starting already to look at the market to be able to subcontract and to put in place all the supply chain. As you said, it's one of the challenge. Development technology, we have good engineers, we need to retain them and to continue to train them. And then industry will be the second key topic.
The point that Benoit is raising is super important. And I think it reminds me when we were at the beginning of OneWeb with the 650 satellites that we had to produce, at the beginning when we were thinking about how can we industrialize that, because I mean it had never been done before, at least in the space industry at the time, we realized that it was very close to the production rate that we were having on the A320. And actually we worked a lot with our colleagues from Airbus to try to say, what does it mean to industrialize? What does it mean to make it happen? So one thing to really have in mind and not to undermine, yes, there is the technology part, but the industrialization aspect, being able to manage the ramp up, being able to sustain the effort to maintain the production rate, because also Constellation, it's not a one-off effect. I mean, I would say you launched the last one, you need to start thinking about what does it mean to keep the production in case you need some replacement, replenishment, and stuff like that.
Camille, what does sovereignty mean to you? What does sovereignty mean to you from a military perspective and connectivity?
Sovereignty means to us liberty to act, to decide. So that's the major point, to be sure that you can have that data from one point to another point without somebody taking it in or preventing you from commanding and deciding. That's it.
And what lessons have we learned from your perspective in terms of connectivity with Ukraine?
So one said, what we have seen in Ukraine, because every infrastructure was broken, in fact they relied on Starlink massively for civilian stuff, for military ones, for UAVs, command and control, for intelligence, for things like that, and it helped them to make their operation. That's what we see. Everyone had his antenna in the system, and being able to command his drone, store in the cloud somewhere else, and then processed. So for us, it's a question of increasing the data rate and the connectivity massively at operative level, for instance, for intelligence, for targeting, and then at tactical level, to be sure that everyone will have the good data to decide and act quicker, for instance, for information superiority, for UAV targeting, things like that.
Thank you. As I was preparing for this Obi talk, the notes I got from your wonderful press team was that Europe must train and retain the talent required to sustain long-term innovation and capability, which ça m'interpelle, because I thought it would be very easy to find people who want to work in this area and to hold on to them. Go on, you're smiling.
So I'm not sure I understood the question, but if it's about talent, yes, of course, it's easy to attract talent. We have talent already in the industry, but we have as well new talent coming, lots of engineers, as you say, who see this sector rightly with bright eyes. We see that this is both extremely dynamic, not easy every day, as a matter of fact, because it's moving so fast, but in fact a fantastic opportunity. So indeed for for all new, engineers, and not only engineers. We need as well to actually sell this constellation, beyond on a global basis. So it's a great opportunity, in fact, for our talent in Europe to work on this domain.
Because we're talking about industrial autonomy as well here.
Yes, absolutely. What we need to be careful also on the topic of talent, and why we are taking also special attention to it, is that we don't take anything for granted. I mean, the space business is much more, and very much these days, interconnected with all the industrial domains, which are competing for the same talents. So making sure that we retain also these talents in the space domain, it's an everyday challenge, and also it is our responsibility to demonstrate clear leadership in the direction and in the ambitions that we are setting for the space domain, because we are in heavy competition with all the other industries.
And one of the difficulty of a space business, it is at the end is to have a long visibility on some areas for young engineers. It's easy to understand where is the future. Take aeronautics, for instance. For the space business, it's a different model, and for which the visibility is not always so easy. And when you look at the space industry, including US and China and Europe, there is a strong support from the government or from the Europe. And to have this visibility, to be able to sustain the investment, to be able to motivate young people to remain, is key in our business, because developing the competencies of young engineers to become an expert in RF or an expert in digital antenna or ASIC, it takes a lot of time, and we need to make sure that we will remain in the activity, we will keep the competencies. It's one of the difficulties in the space industry.
Jean-Hubert, outside of Europe, could others join the system? I mean, could you basically sell this package elsewhere?
So, of course, the answer is yes. I mean, first, commercially, again, the capacity will be global, and this is, again, one of the beauty of those constellations. It's global by nature. We need to get access to the capacity everywhere. We need to sell it everywhere. And so on a commercial basis, yes, it will be available, except, of course, in the countries where we cannot access because the country doesn't want, or because for sanctioned countries. So the answer is yes. Then you have as well, possibilities to build upon IRIS2 for some countries to participate in some ways to this great project, and some early discussions. I will not name countries, but some early discussions are already going on. So yes, lots of interest in IRIS2, not only in Europe, but a bit beyond Europe, as indeed, for all the reasons that we discussed before, which is, again, there will be only a few number of LEO systems or MEO systems, and therefore, this is one of the very few, and therefore it does attract interest from other countries.
If I believe there is a third axis which was presented by the ESA recently, and including during this conference, is as soon as we have IRIS2, to use IRIS2 as a backbone of telecommunication in the space, to enable to get, for instance, the image from Earth observation, from navigation, to use IRIS2 as the backbone of telecommunication, to have then the image of the element on the ground in France or other countries. So IRIS2, the next step of IRIS2 could be to be a backbone of Earth observation and navigation and other type of hosted satellite.
The one thing which strikes me is we're not talking about, with IRIS2, catch-up. We're talking about surpassing what the Chinese and the Americans can do. I mean, that's a big challenge, and it's a big boast. Do you buy it, Camille?
Yeah, so we have to differentiate because we are not the US and China. So there is a question of positioning and the good subject. So for us, maybe the secondary payload, as said, it's an infrastructure. You can imagine a lot of things. For instance, for IoT, for sensors to see. And maybe the much more important point said by Thales Airbus is about the new technology coming with it, 5G standards. That's something very important for a seamless integration with telecommunication, direct-to-device concept for you to be able to discuss directly from the constellation with your smartphone. Things like that, which are concept but already in experimentation, maybe are something very important to differentiate.
Can I just comment, because it's always a word on which I'm reacting. Catching up, it's exactly what you don't want to do in any case. It's always a sort of mistake. You always have to find your own way. Catching up, it's what the guy in the front want to do, because you always stay in his back. And because, I mean, we've got an awful lot of that discussion where everybody saying that, oh, but how are you going to catch up with it? It's about finding our own way. We've got all the building blocks. We've got all the specific needs. We've got the use cases. We've got also our specific views on the sovereignty and security. So it is about finding our own way, not just about catching up.
Anybody else want to get? One thing we haven't touched on is how many satellites are in this constellation. We haven't heard a figure.
282, if I remember well. 264 LEO at 1,200 kilometers and 18 MEO at 8,000 kilometers. It is the first step of IRIS².
That's the baseline. That's the first step. You know, they will likely be more, but this is indeed the backbone, the first step, and that's exactly what we need to deliver service. Back to what you said before the previous question. Today we have already one differentiator, which is GEO-LEO. If you take Eutelsat, a real one, because simply when you install antennas on planes, big airplanes, the fact to have GEO-LEO connectivity is really a plus. It's really a plus. And so this is, as for Eutelsat right now, in terms of current customer traction, we have a huge pipeline of airlines and airplanes that want to actually put their GEO-LEO antennas to have that dual connectivity. And this is what we offer, you know, today at Eutelsat, which is not offered by Starlink as of today.
We're coming close to the end. I'd like to open up to questions. Has anybody got any questions? Yeah, go ahead. There should be a microphone for this gentleman. Here, you'll have to share. You work together already.
Hi, Peter DeSelding, Space Intel Report. For Jean-Hubert, just a clarification. When you're talking about inviting third countries into IRIS², you're talking about commercial or commercial plus soft gov? I presume that's not hard gov. And for both Benoit and Stéphane, I thought the EU rules on IRIS², which can be changed, basically said if I'm a European company and I have interesting technology for IRIS², and I'm bought by a US company, so the decision making for that company is now based in the United States, I can't be a major contributor to IRIS². Or maybe those rules can also be bent. So please clarify.
Thank you.
So, Peter, yes, to your question, it's essentially for the commercial use. Then, you know, Europe and the member states can elect to actually, in some areas and punctually, share capacity as well, including a hard gov. This is allowed in the framework of IRIS², but yes, it's essentially for commercial business.
And just, Peter, answering on your point, IRIS² is about sovereignty and security. There are indeed some very clear and strict guidelines and rules set by the EU to be eligible for IRIS², eligible to be at the different levels and to be part of it. These ones are public, and indeed, I mean, they are pretty strict, and but they are here to be met.
Are you okay? Another question from anyone in the audience? Yep, go ahead.
For Camille Girard, I just wonder, and I take Stéphane's point, IRIS² and Starlink have very different missions. It's, in many cases, it's stupid to compare them. But we do that anyway. And I wonder whether you've ever sat down in front of a OneWeb terminal and a Starlink terminal on the, next to it and compared the performance. I know that IRIS2 will be something different in 5, 6, 7 years, but today's OneWeb, which has got to go on for several more years, and today's SpaceX, I believe you'd agree there's a material difference in the performance of the two. Is that fair to say?
Maybe I will allow myself a first answer.
No,
I will. which is both systems deliver great connectivity, and when you make the comparison in terms of sheer connectivity, it's actually two very comparable systems in terms of very basic metrics. Take throughput, take latency, take availability and stability of the systems. Those three parameters which are key for customers. Based on that, Peter, the systems are very comparable. Then we need to have the global coverage, which, as a matter of fact, as of today, we don't have yet for Eutelsat OneWeb. It's coming. It's already has improved a lot. We are open in so many countries, so market access is there. But again, on the core basic of connectivity, it's actually very good. But please, Camille.
Yes, for maybe 2 points to add. The first one is the altitude. Because OneWeb is about 1,200 kilometers, so it makes it higher. We need 10 less satellites, but it's much more protected against some threats compared to Starlink, which is lower. So that's a point important toward military threats, for instance. I won't go deeper in the subject, but that's important, for instance. For us, as I said previously, the much more important point is about autonomy, strategic autonomy. So it's, of course, from a military perspective, you need to have the company on your soil to be sure that you manage the data. We operate all your communication in the Ministry of Defense, so we have to manage that because it's clearly key. And then, of course, you can use it too, depending of the subject. For instance, where there needs some coverage, for instance, in Antarctica, you could use Starlink too.
Any more questions? Anyone else in the audience? Okay, since we have a little bit of time left, maybe I could get you all just to give 30-second summary where you want to be 2 years from now with the project, not your personal life.
Yes. In 2 years, we'll be in full speed development with a full team, a full European team in place, not only in France, but in all main Europe where we have competencies. For Thales and Space, it will be also Italy and Spain, but we are other supplier in Europe. So in 2 years, we'll be full speed on the development to stick to the schedule.
Yeah, yes, of course. I mean, the topic in 2 years will be to be absolutely in full speed and to be in the production mode. I think what is very important with IRIS2 is to really that just beyond just a topic of cutting metal and so on, we are looking at it as an overall system, and don't forget the security layer and how it needs to be developed and secured. And it is really an end-to-end system.
Couple things. One is really, we have again Eutelsat OneWeb today, and it's just confirming the commercial success that we start to see. OneWeb and LEO is really meaningful for us already in terms of service, in terms of contribution to our business. It's quite meaningful. We need to see that scaling up and continuing. I'm sure we'll get there. So that's one very important. And then, of course, it's preparing the future. The future in several steps. We have ordered the first 100 satellites. We'll soon be there with more announcement. And of course, yes, the momentum in IRIS2. So making sure that the momentum that we see all over here in this hub, by the way, with great companies, Airbus, TAS, new companies as well, lots of startup, that the momentum is here and that Europe indeed confirms its place in this very important sector.
Yes, for us, IRIS2 is a key and strategic for the multi-domain operation with allies, all of the allies, so it's very important for us. So delay is a priority, so we count on Thales, Airbus, Eutelsat, of course, and all the other industrial involved. But it begins now. That's the important point for us. We're already experimenting it because it's new. We have, as users, to experiment it, try the new concept, and help to have a more incremental approach on it.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. And with that, we wrap up this Orbitalk on IRIS2. Thank you very much.